The five-way connector from MakerPipe allows you to join 5 pieces of electrical conduit together to build all kinds of really cool things. We recently updated the overview video. You can check that out to learn all about the five-way connector and how to put it together. And in this video, we're going to look at a few different builds and see how people from the community have used it in their projects so you can get some ideas and see some techniques for using this in your own builds. With that said, let's look at this first one from William. This is a fantastic kind of grid system that he built for, I think it was for like a conference room. They built a projector mount, as you can see up there, which is pretty cool, and allows them to mount the projector to it and move that around. And there's a lot of different connectors used in this, but the one I want to highlight, of course, is the five-way connector that was used here. And this allows you to join 5 pieces of EMT conduit together, as I said. And basically, it allows you to have, basically the middle of the connector, you can have what we call a through connection, which means you can have this mounted anywhere along a horizontal or a vertical or horizontal, depending on how you have the connector oriented. But he's got it here, as you can see, basically mounted flush to create this grid system. It's offset from the ceiling. And then you have 4 pieces of conduit that terminate inside of the connector. So they stop inside of the connector, and the five-way connector, just like all of the MakerPipe clamps, rely on friction. So you don't have to worry about drilling through the conduit or doing any kind of welding or anything like that. You just use a 5mm hex wrench to assemble it, and you can clamp all 5 pieces together. And this is a really standard way that we see this used. It just creates this X-shaped grid, and it's really useful if you're extending a long span of conduit and you need to do kind of an extension lengthwise and widthwise, because you can buy conduit in 5 or 10 foot lengths most commonly, but if you need to do a structure larger than that, then you can have, this piece of conduit coming into it. Maybe it's 7 foot, and then you have another 7 foot piece going out the other side, so you can extend your build, add that vertical support, and then the five-way connector works well to also add, the width-way, kind of widthwise as well. Whereas like the 4-way connector only has one side of those coming out like this. So that works well for, structures. We just did a video on that last week. You can check that out, see how to use the 4-way. But this is really a common way that we see the 5-way connector used. And it's not the most popular connector in the system. It's really useful in these specific use cases where you're working on larger projects. Here's another good example of how it's used, and this comes from David. This is a storage shelf that he built, and you can see here, very similarly to what we just saw, there is a vertical support that goes all the way down to the ground that runs through the middle of the connector, and then he's got these 4 pieces of EMT conduit coming in at an angle, and that they all terminate inside the connector. And this is a shelf system that David built, as you can see. But he used the 5-way connector really creatively because this kind of is an L-shaped shelf, which is cool. If you're building custom storage or a custom desk for a specific space that you have, then you can customize it based on that space and use various connectors. And basically the 5-way connector, the way he's using it, is just to add it has the support going out the other side that runs all the way to the wall. So this is supported all the way into the corner. And then he's got this front piece that kind of continues the L shape down the wall the other direction. He's got this support that goes to the back, which is adding a support for this wood here. And then he's got the support that goes all the way to the side of the structure and then connects to another connector there that we looked at, like I said, with the 4-way connector overview and uses last week. But this is really cool, and just another good example of how you can use this to kind of reinforce your build. And like I said, really useful in those scenarios where you've got to reinforce a build and extend along a span horizontally and kind of widthwise and lengthwise. So that's really cool. And then another use for this we saw from Aaron. This is really cool and very similar to what we just saw. We've got another kind of grid system here that he created, as you can see up here, and in a couple of different places actually, where basically he's got this really awesome shade over his garden beds and over his back patio. And the shade is, protecting the plants and himself and his friends whenever they're outside under this, under the shade. And basically this grid system is here, as you can see, this structure goes from one side of his patio to the other and covers all the garden beds and the patio kind of sitting area. So there's a lot of conduit. It's a really long and wide build. So that's where the 5-way connector really comes in handy. Again, like I said, to extend those builds, has the vertical support going down to the garden bed, and then he's got the span running from side to side, and he's extended those to get the width that he was after. Then he's also got the support running from the front to the back, and that is creating that five-way connection. It really just creates like an X-shaped grid system, which is really awesome and allows you to kind of reinforce your build and get the desired dimensions that you're after, which is awesome. And another great example of this is this 9-square game from David. Perfect example where you can see they're creating a grid system. And this is really useful if you're able to have vertical post in the build. You know, sometimes if you have a canopy or something, you don't want a vertical post in the middle of your patio or whatever it might be. So you might need to use another connector for that. And that's something to mention too, that all 5 pieces of conduit are needed for this to work properly. So if you need, less pipes than that, then check out the other connectors and get the right one for your project. But if you are able to have a column, then this is the way to go, because it works really well and it makes it really simple to have this support system and get those dimensions that you're after. He used a bunch of them in this build, as we can see, because this is one of those builds where he's got to create it's a 9-square game, so he needs 9 squares in this, and so he had to use a bunch of the 5-way connectors to kind of create this whole grid system for this game. And it looks like the kids, the students, are enjoying it, which is awesome. Really cool. And this is, like I said, not the most popular connector, but it solves a really unique challenge and makes it really easy for you to reinforce those long or wide builds, add a vertical support, and still get the support that you might need for the shelves or whatever it might be. So really cool. Thanks everybody for sharing these builds. If you have any questions, definitely let us know. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.